Somebody told you a number. Maybe it was a financial advisor. Maybe you saw a magazine headline. Maybe it was a coworker who said it like was obvious. $1 million. That's what you need to retire. That's the number. And if you don't have it, you're behind. Look, I want to ask you something. Who told you that? And more importantly, who benefits when you believe that? Because I've been looking at the math, and the math tells a very different story than the one you were handed. Look, stay with me, because by the time we're done today, you're going to see that number differently. And it's not because I'm going to motivate you, and not because I'm going to tell you everything, don't worry, it's just fine, but because the math, the actual math, says you've been lied to about what retirement actually costs. Now, a quick note before we go any further. This video, educational purposes only, right? I'm not a licensed financial advisor. Nothing here is personal advice. Your situation is unique. Talk to a qualified professional. Now, if that's true, then who am I to challenge this number? Well, I spent 3 decades in finance. I rose to the CEO of a venture-backed company, and then the stock went to zero. I've lived the fear that I know a lot of you feel right now. I'm not the expert who never struggled. I am the guy who did. And what I found on the other side of that is that the number you were given was never really about your retirement in the first place. It was about somebody else's business model. Now, let me show you exactly how this number was manufactured and why it was in the first place. The financial advice industry has a structural problem. An anxious client needs an advisor. An adequately prepared client does not. Think about that for a moment. If the industry told you that you were probably going to be okay, that Social Security plus a modest portfolio plus maybe a small side income could actually work, they would lose clients. Your inadequacy is their business model. Now, the $1 million number gets repeated by advisors, by the financial media, by retirement calculators that assume you will spend the same amount every year for 30 years, which almost no one actually does. Here's what those calculators almost never account for. Spending in retirement, it's not flat. It follows what researchers call the retirement spending smile. You spend more in your early active years, you spend less in your slower middle years, and healthcare costs ride toward the end. The average retirement spending projection, it overstates what most people actually need by a lot. You are handed a number built on assumptions that don't match how people actually live. And then you were told that falling short of that number means you failed. That's the lie. Let's run the actual math. Not the fear math, the real math. The average Social Security benefit right now, go online, look it up, is approximately $1,970 a month. For a married couple where both partners worked, received benefits, that number is closer to $3,800 a month. Well, do the math. That's $45,600 a year before you touch a single dollar of your savings. Now, let's add a modest portfolio, and I mean modest, not $1 million. If you have $300,000 saved and you follow the widely accepted 4% withdrawal rule, that generates what? $12,000 a year, $1,000 a month. And that to the average Social Security benefit together, and you're roughly at $2,970 a month, almost $3,000 a month, and that's just for a single person. For a couple with combined Social Security and that same $300,000 portfolio, you're looking at $4,800 a month, $57,600 a year. I want you to hear this clearly. The Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances. Look, this is not just my opinion that I just pulled out of the air. This is the government's own data. Found that the median household of adults 65 to 74 years old reported living comfortably with between $100,000 and $250,000 in savings. Not a million. 100,000 to 250,000. The people who told you that you need $1 million were not reading the same data. Now, let me take this a little further, because what happens at, say you have $500,000, and what happens at $700,000 of a portfolio? So at 500, and 500, using the 4% rule, you generate $20,000 a year in portfolio income. What is that? About $1,667 a month. Add an average Social Security for a single person, and you're at $3,637 a month. For a couple, it's over $5,400 a month. At $700,000 in your portfolio, back to that same 4% rule, that generates $28,000 a year, or $2,333 a month. Now, again, combine that with Social Security, let's say for a couple, you're approaching $6,100 a month. That's not a desperate, right, painful retirement. That's a retirement where you are surviving. That's a retirement that works. And not one of those scenarios required $1 million. Now, I know exactly what some of you are thinking right now. Hey, what about inflation? What about healthcare costs? What if I live to 95? Look, these are fair questions, and they deserve honest answers, not just dismissal, and definitely not fear. On inflation, yes, it is real, but here's what most retirement projections miss. Social Security benefits are indexed to inflation. Every year, your benefit adjusts with the cost of living. That's built in. That's not something you have to solve on your own. On healthcare, yes, it is significant. The average retired couple will spend together around $300,000 on healthcare over the course of their retirement. That number is real, and it belongs in your plan. But here's what changes that number dramatically. It's what we call your health span. The choices you make about your body right now, those choices are retirement planning decisions. One chronic condition can add $50,000 to $100,000 to that number. 1 decade of intentional health investment, absolutely called an investment, can reduce that significantly. Your grocery cart, it's a retirement planning decision. On longevity, now living to 95 is possible. It is also not the median. The median American lives to about 77 years for men and 80 years for women. Planning for 30 years of retirement, it's wise. Planning to 95 and telling yourself you're failing because you cannot fund that scenario, that's anxiety, not planning. The answer to longevity risk is not accumulating more money in savings, it's building income that does not run out. Social Security, one option, depending upon your situation, delayed to 70, is the single best longevity insurance product available in the U.S. today, period. It pays you more every month for the rest of your life, no matter how long that life is. So what do you do? What do you do actually with all this information? So 3 things tonight. Number 1, go to ssa.gov and pull your Social Security statement if you haven't already. Create a free account. It takes 10 minutes. Look at your projected benefit at 3 ages. 62, your full retirement age, and for most of us, that's 67 and 70. Write those 3 numbers down. That statement is the foundation of your actual retirement plan, not that $1 million fantasy. Number 2, run your floor. What is the minimum monthly income you need to cover your actual non-negotiables? Like what? Your rent or mortgage, utilities, food, medications, insurance. Write that number down, then subtract your projected Social Security benefit. The gap between those two numbers, that's your actual savings target. That's what you're building. That's what you're after. Not $1 million. The gap between those two. Number 3, if you want to go even deeper, look, I've got a free worksheet over at brainflash.com. It's called the Retirement Reality Check. It walks you through exactly this exercise. Look, drop your email. It comes straight to your inbox. It'll take you about 20 minutes, and it will give you more clarity about your actual retirement picture than any $1 million rule ever did. The number you were given was never about your retirement. It was a sales pitch dressed up as financial advice. The real number, your number, is smaller than you think and more achievable than you were told. I want to leave you with this. The morning you wake up in retirement and there's no alarm, there's no commute, there's no dreaded performance review, that morning is not reserved for people who saved $1 million. It's reserved for people who built a plan based on what they actually have, who understood the math instead of fearing it, who stopped letting someone else's business model determine what their life gets to look like. Most Americans are closer to a workable retirement than the financial industry needs them to believe. You might be one of them. If this video gave you a different way of seeing your situation, would you subscribe? Because this is the way we do things here, and we do it every single week. And if there's someone in your life who's carrying a number that does not belong to them, would you share this video with them? This is Brain Flash.